Hi everyone, my name is Phil and welcome to PhilDoes3D. I'm a multimedia and 3D artist and I stream on Twitch weekdays from 5 PM Pacific time in the US, 11 AM in Australia and 12 AM in the UK. Let's jump into Max and continue on with the model we were working on yesterday. We have to decide what we're going to texture up today. Maybe the lower stairs at the front of the terrace. We'll check the model out and we'll have a look. Remember, as I'm working on the model, if there's anything you don't understand, feel free to pop into chat and ask me a question, or if you just want to pop in and say hello, that's cool too. If you just want to lurk and watch, then that's completely fine as well. So, yesterday we were working on the bases of the runner around the base of the terrace. I think today we might do some work on these steps just at the very entryway just here. So why don't we do that? Select them. Normally I put a base texture down before I paint over the top of it. I won't do that this time. We'll start just with the no, actually I will. I'll throw a base texture down. Why break the habit we've been working with all this time? Let's go to our texture folder. I'm just going to find a texture that's going to be okay just as the base texture that we can then paint over the top of. And now I think I want to go a little darker on the front steps, so I'm going to go with something that's just a bit darker than what we've been using so far. I want to add a bit of contrast between the stairwells, so I think going with a darker texture would work well. I'm just going to find one that I like. I don't like anything in there. Let's just throw this on for now. Pipe in the diffuse channel, and we'll turn on our standard shader and realistic shader. Don't turn it off. Okay, I'm just going to assign that to the model. We'll go into a modify tab. I'm going to collapse that stack. You don't have to collapse the stack if you think you want to go back and alter anything that you've worked on the model. But it gets a bit unwieldy if it gets too long. So I just like to, once I know I'm not going to be changing the underlying mesh of the model, I just like to collapse the stack down. Let's throw a UVW map on. I'm just going to angle it up a bit. Fit it to the model. Just going to pull it out a little. Like I said, this is our base texture, so we're not too worried about what it looks like. I might even go, no, we'll leave that at 1. We'll even go 2 on that. Alright. Okay, so let's put our unwrap UVW on. We're going to go into map channel 2. We'll move the UVs across. We'll open the UV editor and select our UVs, and we'll throw a flatten mapping on. Alright, now we want to go to, we'll just deselect our UVs there. Now we're going to go render to texture. We're going to use existing channel 2. We'll throw on a diffuse map. We'll make it a 2K texture. And we're going to save it into our stairs folder. That's the folder we've been working with all along. It just keeps everything in the one spot. And we're going to call this one lower stairs, I think. We're going to save it as a target file.tga as a 24-bit. Okay, so we have our existing channel 2, our diffuse map, our path to our map, and our texture size. So we're going to render. Alright, we can close down the render to texture. Now we're going to go into our utilities panel and channel info. And we're going to copy map channel 2 into map channel 1. And we're going to clear map channel 2 because we don't need it anymore. We have our object selected, so we're going to go to File. Next always does this, File, Export. Export selected. Again, we're going to save it into our stairs folder. We're going to save it as an OBJ, and we'll call it lower stairs. The debug values are fine. And I'm just going to rename it here lower stairs so that everything's consistent. Okay, let's jump into Mari. We're going to start a new project. I'm going to call it lower stairs. I'm just going to move my temp directory. We're going to load up that object we just exported from Max, lower stairs.obj. We're going to create a texture that's 2048, and we'll just hit OK. Alright, I'm going to go into flat shaded mode so I can have a better view of what I'm working on. I'm going to import into the layer stack that texture we just rendered out from Max, which is just our base color. Again, we'll just put a star here to see everything in the folder. Lower stairs.tga is the one we want. We're going to import all patches. If people are confused about what a patch is, in Mari, it considers each UV block here a patch. So that will be one patch, that will be one patch, because you can have multiple UV patches per model in Mari. We want to go back into our ortho view. Let's have a look here. Now I'm going to import some textures. we'll grab everything in the directory because why not? We can. It doesn't take up any memory in Mari. It only loads a pointer to the texture and shows an image. It doesn't load the actual texture into the program, so you're not using more memory or anything like that. You might as well grab them all and have more of a variety to work with. Okay, I'm just going to do a quick save on the project. Now, in Mari, you can hit the number keys to give you different directions, front, back, side, so forth. That's just a shortcut if you don't want to rotate around the model and you'd prefer to have a set viewport. I generally like to rotate around the model. I think it's a little bit more interactive and easier to work with. So I'm just going to angle the model up a bit like that. Let's look for a texture. What's this one like? Maybe. Let's see what this is like. We're going to work on a new layer. I'm just going to scale that down a bit. I'm actually going to zoom in to the model a little bit more, I think. I'm doing that just by holding down the Alt key and clicking with the right mouse button and dragging as I click. And again, Alt key and middle mouse button to move. Zoom in, move over, zoom in, about there. Now. I'm going to zoom in a bit on this texture. And I'm looking at this block here as I want to get that block about the same width as the step. So I can see the texture of the step underneath of that block, and I know it needs to be a bit bigger. Maybe even a bit bigger still. Something like that. We'll paint that down. And in fact, I think I'm going to go a little bit bigger still. We'll just paint over that. No, I still want to go bigger. Yeah, that should be good. I'm just going to paint that in. Again, it's not actually assigned to the UVs until I hit the Alt key to bake it down. I'll move the model over. Line it up again. Maybe we'll start at about there. And again, I've got masking turned on, and that's what that red shading is there. That's just so I don't accidentally paint on a face that I don't want to. Now I'm going to move the texture around a bit. I think in here. So we'll start about there. Press the Alt key to back it down. And I think we'll go back to around here. Something like that. No, in fact I need to go down a little bit. Okay, I'm just going to bake that down. And now let's move on to the next step down. So we'll line it up around there. These are going to be very old, worn, weathered steps. Okay, let's bake that down. I'm just going to move my texture a little bit so I've got a bit of variety. You notice I'm only working on one step at a time. I'm not painting all the way down them. Bake that down. And again, we're going to move it maybe there. I'll bake that down. And let's work with this top piece here, I think. I'm just going to bake that down. Now I'm noticing these two rocks here are the same, and I don't want that, so I'm going to quickly throw in this stone right here. And I'm just letting go of the mouse so I get a better view of the texture that I'm painting in as I'm painting it. Just like that. We'll bake it down. Alright, now let's go to let's go with you, I think. I'm just going to move my model over a bit. In fact, I'm just going to move my texture down just a little bit. I'll bake it down. We'll go with you, I think. And again, I want to move you down a little bit. I'll bake that down. Now, let's go with you. Bake you down. And yes, maybe you here on the end. And I'll bake that down. Now let's go with you, I think. All right, bake it down. I might just continue on with this texture here, I think, because it's fairly plain looking texture. You're not really going to notice any repetition. In this part of the texture it is anyway. I'll bake that down. And we'll just move it up a little bit, and I'll move it in a little bit. Okay, I'm going to bake that down. And this bit on the end we will do just like this. Okay. And this bottom step here, I think we'll go with width. And I go with you, I think. I'm just going to pull that down. So I'm just going to move it up. So pull that one down a little. And this bit on the end, I'm going to move it down. Alright, we'll back that down. Just going to pan out a bit and move to our side view here. Now I have masking turned on, so I don't have to worry about texture stretching along the top as I'm painting it in. Normally I would angle the model up like that if I wasn't using masking, but because I am using masking I don't have to worry about it so much. Alright, now we're looking for a part of the texture that is quite plain. I think maybe the bottom pieces here. I'm just going to rotate that texture around slightly. These part of the stairs are quite narrow and they're not really going to be hugely noticeable in the model, so you don't have to worry about repetition quite so much. Still, I'm just moving the texture just up and down slightly to give it a bit of variation. it down. Okay, bake that down. Let's move on to the next step. And again, I'm just slightly moving the texture as I move along the model, just to break it up a little bit. Move it up. And I'm being careful not to paint up here because I've already textured that and I don't want to paint over what I've done. So anything below is fine. Anything above we just have to be a bit more careful about. Just gonna move that down. Okay. Bake it down with the Alt key. Bake it down. Bake it down. We'll bake that down. We have our last two steps here, front of the last two steps I should say. Okay, we'll bake that down. So you're going to move that up just a little bit. Bake it down. Might move that just down a little. Bake that down. Let's do the front just here. Again, I'm just going to rotate my texture a tiny bit. And again, remember to rotate from the edge here to have more control. So I'm going to do that with this texture, I think. Bake that down. And we'll go down to this one. And the reason I'm making this a little different is because it's at the very front of the model, so you will see this from the front viewport if you're rendering out the model side. Okay, we'll move that down. It's the very first step, so it's quite noticeable. Bake it down. Okay, we'll paint that in there. Excuse my answering machine going off in the background. And we'll bake that down. Alright. Okay. Now, I just want to add a bit more interest to this texture. So I'm going to go back up to the top here. Just going to quickly save that file. And I'm going to add a new layer. I'm going to pull in some more textures. Open that up. Okay, I'm just going to pull this texture in quickly. I want to have a bit of a look at it. Pull it back. That could be interesting. Yeah, that could be very interesting. Let's play around with this texture a little bit. We're working on a new layer. I'm just going to change my brush style a little bit. I'm going to make the radius a little larger. I'm going to pull back on the flow and pull back on the opacity as well. Okay, so we're working in a new layer. We'll make sure we are in a new layer. Yes, we are. I'm just going to paint over this. Bake that down quickly. I'm going to move to the side. Do the same sort of thing. Just painting over the edges here to add a bit of difference to the underlying texture. We'll bake that down. I'm just going to follow that through with the middle part just here. Okay, we'll bake that down. Okay, I'm just going to move that up a little. play with our opacity a bit. Alright. Going to throw on a new layer. And we're going to see what you look like. Scale it down. No, I don't like that one. See what you look like. You could be interesting. Let's move the model over slightly. And again, I'm going to paint this in completely. Move it over. Paint that down, bake it down. Bake that down. I'm just going to move the texture up out of the way for a minute. Pull that back perhaps just a bit.